It's truly an honor to be invited to speak at the webinar and to address the GTAG. I've done that before, as some of you may have already heard as we were chatting before the start. So yes, my name is Petra, and I will do my best to give you an overview of the unique digital society that Estonia has built over the last 30 years or so. So I will jump straight into my presentation. You are very welcome to ask questions. I encourage that. Write them in the chat. We will, once I'm done with the 60-minute presentation, we will be able to address them one by one, and I would love to have a conversation with you. So, so it could be interesting to exchange experiences. It's not just you learning from our experience. I'm hoping to learn a lot from you as well. All right. So let us. Oh, all right. So yes, I do have to start with a brief historical overview, because Estonia is rather an unlikely place, such a tiny spot on the map. Such a small country with such an insignificant population, if you think about it, and yet we have been able to transform our country completely, and as of December last year, reach a fully digital state. We have now launched an international campaign letting the world know that Estonia is finally a fully digital state, and 0% bureaucracy. That's how we like to talk about it. But 30 years ago, specifically in 1991, when we regained independence from the Soviet Union, which we were part of involuntarily, we were presented with quite a challenge. We inherited a broken state, rather corrupt, with a pretty dysfunctional government that we had to rebuild from scratch. And we decided to go digital, which was quite unusual, obviously, for the time, for pragmatic reasons, really. With our tiny population that is actually scattered across the country. So even though we are a tiny speck on the map, our population is so small that we're very sparsely populated. The challenge was to provide services to these hard-to-reach people, plus with very limited resources. We never have enough manpower, not enough people, and we never have enough resources. We were quite broke in the 1990s. So it was the cheapest way. Going digital, providing digital government services was the cheapest way to reach all these people. That was the vision. That was the dream. And we didn't have, I don't think our leaders back in the day, however bold and young they were, I don't think they really knew what this journey, where this journey would take us. Yet we had something that we could work with from the very beginning. So in addition to all of the challenges that we had, we also had the Cybernetics Institute located in Tallinn since the 1960s. Now, the importance of this is that we had homegrown IT talent present in our tiny country with the experience of providing IT services, rudimentary, of course, in the 1990s, but still, to the entire Soviet Union, which is several 100,000 people. So we had that talent present locally, and we embarked on that journey. However, we didn't jump straight into providing digital services. In the 1990s, that would have been impossible. We lacked basic infrastructure that you need in order to provide services. So in the 1990s, we did a lot of preparation, a lot of boring work, so to speak. We had to teach our people to use computers. They hadn't really seen any, because we as a population were just as broke as our state. We couldn't afford computers. That was definitely before the smartphone era. I think you get the picture. So we started with providing the internet to schools and training the trainers and providing education to the older generation. It was a massive government-supported effort. I already mentioned our digitally minded leadership. It was thanks to their decision to stay true to digitalization efforts, despite scarcity, despite the fact that it was very difficult at points in time to allocate funding, because everything needed to be rebuilt in Estonia. Our schools needed to be rebuilt, our hospitals needed to be rebuilt, roads needed constructing, everything had to be funded. And yet digitalization, once we made the decision to go digital, it has always remained a priority. And of course, we needed to create laws that in the 1990s did not support the provision of digital services. We're actually still working on it. The technology evolves so quickly. We try not to regulate technology. We try to regulate processes, but still, we have to continuously keep working on our legislature to allow new and better, more efficient digital services. So in the early 2000s, we were finally ready with the backbone of our digital society that I will talk about in more detail, the X-Road and EID. So just keep that in mind. You will hear that, that word again. 2010s, 2020s, this is when the world pretty much learned about our digital transformation, because we started offering, for example, e-residency in 2014, because we could, because we wanted to showcase the progress that we had made by then. And we started inviting nationals of other countries to join our digital nation. I'll speak about that too in a moment. But yeah, there was a lot of preparation that went into the provision of digital services at the very beginning. What do we have now, 30 plus years later? As I said, we are a fully digital state. In December, we digitized the last remaining government service that hadn't been digitized. That was divorce. And now we are a fully digital state. So any transaction that a citizen or a resident needs to conduct with the government can be done online. It can also be done offline. We offer both possibilities, just in case a person is unwilling or unable to use online services. There's always an offline option, but most of the people we find benefit greatly from the convenience and the efficiency of digital services. And when you talk about a fully digital state, it's not just the public sector, it's not just government services. In Estonia, almost everything you need to do in terms of your private transactions can also be done online. And that is the expectation. An Estonian consumer is very demanding. They want all of the services to be available online from the comfort of their home. We have really bad climate. No one wants to go outside. We really don't know what it's like to queue or like stand in line for anything, or be on hold for hours trying to figure out something with your bank or with your government official. That is just not part of life in Estonia. And declaring taxes, for example, one of the first things that we digitized in 1999 was declaring taxes. It takes just a few clicks for a private person to declare their taxes, because of the infrastructure that we have built. Once you log into the tax board's web page, you see a pre-filled tax form with the information that has been collected from the different databases. And all you need to do is basically just check and confirm. Takes a couple of clicks. It's just an example, but we're doing this to save time and money for everyone involved. These are the two things that we will never have enough of. We will never have enough people in this country. In fact, we are going to have to become even more efficient, because we have a declining population and an aging one. If we are at 1.3 million people now, in several decades, we'll be 1.2. Unless all of you are going to come and stay. You're very welcome to come to Estonia. We are very open to to people moving to Estonia. That's pretty much the only way we can keep this population rolling. So we're saving lots of time. We're making lives much easier for people. And we're going to keep doing that because there's always something you can improve on. And there's always money to be saved because, you know, you need money in so many different areas of a state. It's just not a good idea to spend it on governance if you can save it there. So what are the I guess the most important essential characteristics of our digital society? What we find important to keep in mind when a country embarks on this journey or wants to go digital. So we find that it is very important for the decision to go digital to come from, you know, top down. The leaders have to make this decision. The funding needs to be allocated, and the society will come along. But if there is no decision by the leaders, there's not going to be the certainty that is required for the society to go through the transition and to become a digital state. I've already mentioned that we are improving people's lives. The services that we are providing, digitally and otherwise, they have to keep the citizens' interest in mind. The first versions of our platforms were not very user-friendly because we didn't have the experience in the early 2000s of, you know, like design, service design. We had to learn that the hard way. So now we know a lot more. Countries who are just starting this journey now or continuing their journey, they have so many best practices available to them. They can avoid so many mistakes that Estonia did at first. You can make your own, but basically, if the services are good, people are going to want to use them. So we aim for citizen-centric services. And the way we build our digital society is through public-private partnerships. It is quite unfeasible to imagine a situation where any government, any country, however many people you have, 80 million, 120 million, doesn't matter. You're not going to have the best and the brightest minds working for the government that can be in charge of building the digital state or building the digital platforms. You can try to win them over, buy them, because the private sector always pays more, right? So that's usually the issue. We decided not to compete with the private sector. We just outsource. We outsource to the private sector, and we build the know-how in our private sector. Thanks to this, more than 50% of our digital government has been built by the private sector. And this is actually something that we're famous for, among other things. And this is something that we're known for, and we're very, very proud of the things that our companies can do for other governments and other companies globally. Of course, in the early 1990s, we had absolutely no internet anywhere in Estonia. It is critical to have internet. The population needs access to it in order to use digital services. So in Estonia, actually, access to the internet is a social right. We keep improving on our connections. There's always faster speeds that you can offer, more broadband connections, but pretty much 98% of our country is covered with 4G, which is pretty much outdated. We need to move towards IoT and 5G. So this is on our 2030 agenda to improve broadband connection across the country. And of course, all individuals own their data, which means that even though the government collects a lot of the data on their citizens, they're just a keeper. It's not the government's data, it is the people's data. It is my data that the government is handling for me with the intention of providing services to me. So I have the right to ask my government to report to me how they're using my data, and they need to be accountable. Now, I mentioned that we started with mass digital literacy trainings in the 1990s. In fact, in 1996, we launched a Tiger Leap initiative. That's the program that brought internet to schools and computer classes and provided computer training to children. Children are the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. It is a lot easier to teach children. They have flexible minds. They're excited to learn new things, and they go home and then they get their parents excited or worried. Well, anything is possible. But basically, by 2001, we managed to provide all of our schools with computer classes in the internet, and it wasn't actually uncommon for the parents, once the children left school and left computer classrooms, to come into school and into these computer classrooms, use the infrastructure that existed in schools to learn how to use computers themselves. But we had also specific training for people who no longer go to school. So the older generation, the Look at World initiative was, and still is, a program where participants can, free of charge, learn how to use computers, learn how to use smartphones in libraries or community centers, ask a librarian how to use a computer. So a very practical approach. We find that it's rather important not to forget the older people in society. So we had this targeted program that helped the older generation also get on board with modernization and the digital transformation. Of course, civil servants also need attention because they are the ones in charge of providing these digital services. And these days, the most important thing, the most topical issue, I guess, is cyber hygiene tests and raising awareness of the entire society about phishing emails and about cyber hygiene. Because even though we have a very solid infrastructure, cybersecurity at a very high level, it is secure by design. It's this one tired employee basically that opens that phishing email at the end of the day that may ruin your entire network. So people need to be aware of the social engineering that can damage their personal data, or that can lead hackers to their bank accounts. So let's talk about the backbone of our digital society. How we operate. How is it possible that all of the government services have been digitized, that both the public and the private sector can provide services to people who never visit their offices? So there are certain components. One of them is EID, so electronic identification. A unique identifier, basically, that is issued to everyone in the country, that will allow them to authenticate themselves safely online. In Estonia, we introduced the EID in 2002, so it's been several decades. And we didn't give anyone an opt-out. It is not an optional thing. Everyone has to have an EID. People were not excited about it at first, because in 2002, there weren't very many digital services that our government had rolled out yet. So we were forced to get these plastic cards. They are actually, they are very physical plastic cards that are ID cards, but they come with a chip at the back that has our private key that allows us to authenticate ourselves online. Took us actually around 6 years to finally start using this feature, this chip at the back of the card, when the banking sector basically started giving out these ID card readers for free to their clients to incentivize them to log into internet banking, and slowly started picking up this usage, thanks to the banking sector, actually. So it was a private sector service. Now, I mentioned ID card readers. We used to have to really insert our chip in an ID card reader. I don't even have one to show you because this is ancient technology. No one does that anymore. You can still see public officials inserting their ID card into a keyboard or directly into their laptop or computer when they are providing services to citizens in order to authenticate themselves, like constantly be online, because everything is personalized. But other than that, mostly people do not use the actual chip on the card to log in. We use mobile authentication methods like mobile ID and smart ID. Mobile ID is an SMS. Got the word. An SMS-based service, let's call it that. So it's a special SIM card that I get from my telecommunications company that I can put into my smartphone. It's connected to my personal code, and I can authenticate myself using PIN codes. Same goes for Smart ID. The difference is that it is an application-based solution. And of course, I mentioned already that we started showcasing our achievements in the in digital transformation to the world in 2014, when we offered an e-residency program to pretty much everyone in the world. So an e-residency is a state-issued, Estonia state-issued ID card or e-ID that allows people to become part of our digital society, access our digital infrastructure remotely, and mostly it's used to establish a company through our digital infrastructure. It is very easy to do that in Estonia. It's very affordable. Takes about half an hour basically to establish a company online. The excitement in this offer is that once you establish a company in Estonia, you, as a businessman or business person, get access to the entire European Union. The market is 500 million people. So running a business remotely with our digital infrastructure with access to 500 million people is a pretty good offer. Actually, yeah, I'll not go into that in more detail, I guess, for now. So yeah, okay, you have e-ID, you have a way to authenticate yourself online. That's lovely. I mentioned that our digital society is secure by design. What I mean by that is that our infrastructure is very decentralized. We do not have one or even two large databases where we store all of the citizens' data. That is a bad idea, and just makes it too easy for hackers. Basically, it's an invitation to a hacker to just break into your database and get access to all of the data. We don't keep all our eggs in the same basket. So we have hundreds and thousands of databases, both public and private, that are completely decentralized and that store fractions of information. We have a once-only principle in Estonia, meaning that any data point about a citizen or a company has only needs to be submitted once. So, for example, my place of residence or some other civic data is only going to be stored with the population registry. Any information pertaining to me as a driver or an owner of a vehicle is going to be in a different database somewhere with the transportation authority. List goes on. There is no one database in which you can hack and steal basically all of the information about an Estonian citizen. And then this is great, but what is very important in this scenario is that you have an interoperability platform. For us, it's the X-Road that we've had since 2001. It is an information exchange layer that allows all of these decentralized databases, both public and private, to communicate, to exchange information. So my bank, for example, can confirm my official place of residence if they need to, if they are authorized to know this information, or if I give them this, if I grant them this right, they can requested from the population registry where my address is stored. They do not need to ask me. So this saves me a lot of time. I do not have to provide my address or update my information with all of the registries that should, for example, know where I live. So that's the once only principle, and that's the X-Road, the interoperability for us. So basically, we've touched about on the two pillars of the three of a functioning digital society. The only missing component from the CIA triad is the cybersecurity, right? I mentioned security by design. It's a little bit too late to think about how to secure your databases or database once it has been built. So that is something that you need to think about from the very beginning. And when it comes to the X-Road and the data tracker and the timestamping that we use to make sure that any transaction on the X-Road between the databases leaves a trace, that I can show you when I go online in just a minute. I want to show you what the X-Road actually looks like. So please allow me a few moments. That is, ladies and gentlemen, the backbone or the back end of Estonian digital society. These are the hundreds and the thousands decentralized databases that can exchange information when they're authorized to get that information. Now, they do not keep a copy of that information. Again, the once only principle says that you can only sort of rent that information. You can use it to provide a service, but it has to return back to the original database where it came from, where it has to be stored, and that is regulated by law. Any transactions between these databases are time-stamped. The technology that we use for it is called KSI blockchain. It has very little to do with blockchain, but it is a time-stamping mechanism. And I can actually show you once I log in into the state portal how a citizen or an e-resident, anyone with access to Estonian digital infrastructure, so anyone with a personal code, can check how their data is being used by the public databases. This is to ensure that people can enforce that right of them being the owner of the information or the owner of their data. So as I log in into the state portal, I want to talk about a few things, but also have a look at this lovely notification here at the very top. It's a very common occurrence when I talked about the cyber hygiene and raising awareness. This is a very common occurrence that we see information about criminals pretending to be representatives of certain agencies or government officials and trying to scam us out of money. They are actually usually very successful. Estonians lose millions of euro every year for these sort of phishing attempts. It's very difficult to break into our digital infrastructure, right? It's very difficult to get all the information that you need from, when digital society is built this way. It is much easier to trick the person into basically giving you their PIN codes. This is the social engineering that we all very often fall victim to. So let's log in, and I will that gives me an opportunity to speak about the authentication methods that are available to an Estonian. It's a very common view, it's a standard view that you see when you want to log in into pretty much any government service in Estonia. So an ID card, the ancient technology that I mentioned where you insert your chip either into the laptop directly or through an ID card reader into your computer. No one really uses that. There are better ways to do it. Smart ID is an app-based solution, so I will get a notification on my smartphone that prompts me to enter my PINs. Mobile ID is the technology of choice for me, an SMS-based solution. As you can see, the personal codes are pre-saved on my computer. Only one of them is mine. And personal codes are not a secret in Estonia. It is public information. There's really nothing you can do to hurt me by knowing my personal code. We don't hide them. The only thing you can deduce is my age, because it is encoded in every personal code. Some people are uncomfortable with that. You have to be okay. Everyone knows that you're aging. It's okay. All right. Phone number, please don't call me. Okay, now I need to make sure that I see the same code on my phone. It's taking some time. I'm sorry. Usually it doesn't take so long.
Petra?
What? Yeah?
So it seems that you guys use a lot of multi-factor authentication to authenticate users.
Mostly two possibilities, mobile ID and smart ID. I'll restart the process. Do you have a sorry, do you have a question about them?
So I was just saying that you use quite a bit of multi-factor authentication. So it's not just put your ID and put a password. You also need to have your phone with you to get a code on your phone or something like that, or check a code on your email address.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thanks for clarifying. So yeah, I could do without a smartphone. If I have an ID card reader, and do it the old way, physically insert the chip into the computer, or with the use of ID card reader, do it this way. But mostly people are on their phones. Most people in Estonia have a smartphone, so they prefer the smart ID, the app-based solution, or the mobile ID. And then we do not get notifications on our email or anything like that. We do not use biometrics. It's a PIN code system. So what I'm trying to do is actually I'm trying to get a prompt on my phone to insert my pins, which I'm not going to share with you because that will compromise my digital twin. But I seem to be struggling with the system. Now, this usually means actually that the system is down for some reason. I don't remember the last time when it took me so long to log in, but it could be a cyber attack that is currently ongoing. It usually is that because this service actually works without fault. So we have Russia to the east, and they really like to probe our networks. They really hack us or try to hack us a lot. Not successfully, yes. They try to hack us, bombard us with DDoS and all sorts of attacks. So it could be the result of one of them that's currently ongoing. But usually we're back online very quickly. So I'll try to do it again. Hopefully I'll be able to do it. It would be rather unfortunate if I couldn't demonstrate you this. It's part of my plan. Let's do it again. Personal code, personal number. Come on. If not, I'll just continue with my presentation, and I'm sorry. I failed to get this prompt on my phone. There's simply no connection. Okay. I'll try to do it a little bit later. Let's continue with the presentation. I'll do my best to compensate for this unfortunate event with the slides that I have. So yes, the three pillars: EID, interoperability platform that allows the databases to exchange information, and cybersecurity, right? This is what you need to have a functioning digital society. Oh, yes, I got one. I don't know if you can see it. It asks me if I see the same pin code on my screen. So I will insert my pins. And I'll share my page again. Hopefully it's going to work. Oh, how exciting. I'm so happy you can see that. This is a great illustration of things not always going smoothly. For the most part, this is actually really rare. And even if systems are down or very slow, it never lasts for longer than an hour or two, mostly. I'm sorry. We'll continue with the presentation. But yeah, speaking of security, Estonia has been a pioneer in a lot of the things that we do, because we started our digitalization journey rather early. So none of the countries had decided to go fully digital at the same speed, at least, as we did. So it's actually unsurprising that we had to invent a lot of the tools or a lot of the solutions that we're currently using. We simply needed a solution, so we needed to come up with creative ways to address our problems. And considering that we always had limited resources, never enough people, never enough money, we do bootstrap quite a lot. And our this creative solutions is something that we're very good at, and we are very welcoming to other people's creative solutions. Estonia is known as a test bed, technical test bed, and test bed for all sorts of crazy ideas that the world has and wants to try out. We welcome these ideas and allow people to use Estonia as a test bed, basically. But speaking of security, one of the novel ideas that we had in 2017 was that, considering that we don't want to keep all our eggs in the same basket, and considering that we have Russia to the east that may be interested in our physical territory, to be completely frank, we want to be able to provide services and to support our people regardless of what happens to Estonia. We want to be able to continue being Estonian and living as Estonians, whatever happens to our country physically. It could be a flood, it could be a devastating fire, it could be any of those things, but the most likely scenario is that we might lose control of our territory temporarily. So we keep copies of our most precious databases in Luxembourg in a data embassy. To our knowledge, officially, we're the only country who's doing that. But from what we understand, a lot of the countries are interested in the concept, and they decided that if they have a data embassy somewhere, they're not going to share it with the world for security reasons. We were the first ones. We're very open about our decision to store data copies in Luxembourg in a tier 4 data center. We're probably not the only country doing that anymore. But officially, we are the only ones. So something to think about. We know that we will get control of our country eventually. We'll get it back. But if temporarily we lose control, we'll be able to provide digital services to our citizens wherever they are and wherever our government is located. And we've had a lot of experience with cyber attacks, as already mentioned, and Estonia had a really good, had an excellent opportunity to test our digital society structure and design in 2007, when we became fell victim of the first ever cyber attack against a nation state. At least officially, that's considered to be the first attack against a nation state. Naturally, it was Russia, and we realized, as a result of that massive DDoS attack, we didn't lose any data. The biggest impact was that some of the web pages of banks or media outlets were down for several hours, but it was a massive scare. To be honest, we weren't sure what was happening, and as a result of our reaction to this attack and how we reacted, how we came together to fight against it, we were recognized as cybersecurity specialists. We've been pioneering, basically preparing for these kinds of attacks on a global scale. Cyber knows no borders. So we advocate for training for these sort of events, and we want to approach cybersecurity internationally. So Estonia is known as a pioneer in promoting these ideas. And as a result of the 2007 attacks, Estonia started hosting the NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence, and the EU IT agencies also located in Tallinn, and it's only located in Tallinn. So we have a lot of experts present locally. We train a lot, we advocate for it, and we are recognized as experts globally. We let cybersecurity specialists who are working for the private sector volunteer for the country in the form of a cyber defense league. So you would be surprised to learn how many people are willing to solve very complicated tasks for their country, because no one can challenge them that much, or like a country can. So they have their well-paying, comfortable jobs in the private sector, and in the evenings or at the weekends, they once in a while help the country improve its cyber defense. It's also possible to serve in cyber command. So we have a military conscription. We never lost that since we regained independence. And if you have an interest and skill to learn to become a cybersecurity specialist, you can do that as form of your military training. And of course, lots of trainings, blue team, red team, we conduct them for the entire Europe. So this is just a few points, not to brag really, but just to illustrate that we have been aware of the dangers of an unprotected digital society. So we're working very hard to make sure that every other country that goes digital or embarks on this journey is aware of these risks and thinks about security from the very beginning, security by design. Now, one of the interesting illustrations of a fully digital state is iVoting, right? It's one of the most asked about services by delegations who come to visit Estonia and come to the briefing center to learn about e-governance. It's quite unique. Estonia truly is the only country in the world so far that is voting online. We've had this service available since 2005. So we've been doing it for more than 20 years. We have a lot of experience in it. And it's actually one of the services that was picking up in popularity quite slowly. So the first time when we surpassed the 50% mark, so 50% of voters chose to cast their vote online. It took us 18 years to get there. So in 2023, for the first time, finally, more than half of the people chose to vote online, because an offline option is there, it's available. It's actually very, it's lovely to go to a polling station and cast a vote. It's very popular. The physical voting is very popular with the younger people because they grew up in a society, those who were born after the 2000s, they grew up in a society where they literally haven't met the government. For them, it's just a platform or a web page that they don't even need to visit, really. So going to a polling station to exercise your democratic right is an activity that they want to do offline. And surprisingly or unsurprisingly, iVoting is highly popular with people age 75 plus. Almost 100 people over the age of 75 vote online because it's just more convenient. Older people have difficulty walking sometimes, so the government can come to them. And we feel that through tools like this, we can empower citizens to exercise their right. Because one of the biggest benefits that we got as Estonians from our digital state is transparency. We've eradicated pretty much corruption, because you cannot bribe a computer when everything is transparent, when every transaction leaves a trace, when you don't need to have special connections to get a service because it's just a couple of clicks away on a web page. This empowers people. This gives them trust that their voices will be heard. We actually even have platforms that make it even easier for people to show initiative. So a citizens initiative portal is exactly the name. So where they can submit any ideas and have people, other people vote on these ideas. And when they get enough votes, which isn't even a very big threshold, then the parliament, for example, will be obliged to look at this initiative and vote on it. So people feel empowered and feel that they can direct the country, the development of the country. So iVoting is basically one of those measures that we have. It's strictly optional. You don't have to do it. It's much cheaper to actually collect votes online. It's much cheaper to run the system, but because we have both systems running in parallel, we're actually paying for both. So we're never going to stop allowing people to use all the government services offline. This is not on the agenda anytime soon. So good to know that it's cheaper, but pretty much we're still paying for both of them. I wanted to show you the e-health portal that we have, to show you all of the wonderful features of being able to see your entire medical history, all of your prescriptions, book times with your with a doctor or a medical professional. And I wonder if I will be able to do it. Now a little bit of time has passed. I really want to try to log in again, because it's just unfortunate if I cannot show you this. So cool to see the actual product, not just slides. Let me just try to do it myself quietly in the background. I'm not going to share the screen, just to see if I can log in. Okay, good sign. A notification popped up. Although I did that last time and then nothing moved. Bingo. 10 minutes before the end of the presentation, we have it. This is the state portal. This is a gateway to all of the government services that I could potentially need. Now, the dashboard is just a collection of the most commonly used services that people could be interested in. I see that it's still uploading. Okay, so to demonstrate my point, the power of the X-Road, the information exchange layer, the data exchange layer, the decentralized databases, and EID, right? That infrastructure. Granted that I know that this is secure, my data is protected. Now, for example, if I want to update my place of residence, I only need to click on this link. It'll take me to a different resource, a different database where I can continue my session and update my place of residence. I will not need to do it with every other government body. They will be able to request my address because I've updated it, the once only principle. Same goes for any sort of documents, ID card, passport, driver's license. If I want to sell my car or do something with my driver's license, I will be, again, taken to the Transportation Authority webpage. I don't need to know the exact address. I can navigate whatever I need to find. I can navigate it from the state portal. That's the idea, right? Now, the most common services are here. For example, I can see my whole list of prescriptions. It's only the last several, my ADHD prescriptions. So I can also do that on the state the health portal, but it's accessible through here. I can, for example, see how much pension, like retirement funds I have, how much I've saved for my retirement. If I click on these links, I'm not going to disclose that. It's not enough, clearly. So everything can be navigated from here. Now, I mentioned that it's possible for me for anyone to check how my data is being used, right? Exercise that right. I'm the owner of my data. So I can check how my personal data is being used by national databases. To be honest, take it with a pinch of salt, because there are more than 400 different national databases in Estonia. And because being part of this data tracker is an option, it's optional. We're not forcing national databases to join this initiative. I can actually only check right now how my data is being used in 15 databases out of 400. This is something that we're hoping to improve, that we're going to improve. So do believe me when I say that we are nowhere near done with building the digital society. There's always something that we can improve. There's actually quite a lot. So I just removed the queries that I initiated, meaning every time I log in to check anything with the government, it leaves a trace, right? Because I showed you this, right? And I told you that everything is time-stamped. Every transaction, every piece of data, when it travels, it leaves a mark. And I'm showing you exactly what sort of marks it leaves. Now, this is in Estonian. It is just a technical log, but I think you get the picture. So the exact time and date when a private or public company from this list, like it's right there, checked some sort of information in the population register regarding me. So if I see here something that strikes me as unusual, I don't recognize a name, or I don't understand why they might be interested in my data, then we have a data protection agency that will look into it. If the company, a public company or a private company, doesn't have a good answer about why they were checking my data. So it's in my power to request the data, and they have to reply. Now, I wanted to show you, why is this in my way? I wanted to show you the health portal, right? And talk about that a little bit. I really apologize if I'm jumping a little bit. Now, I'm going to log into the health portal. And again, you see the same view. We log in dozens of times a day without really thinking about it. As you know, when systems function, you don't give it much thought. I don't know how long the systems were down, but now they're working at the regular speed. So I'm putting in my PIN 1. It's a 4-digit number that I'm not going to disclose. So PIN 1, when I insert that, I just authorize. I just confirm that this is me logging in. This is indeed me, Petra Holm, who is logging in. If I want to confirm something, if I want to sign a document, if I want to confirm a transaction, any type of transaction, I will put in PIN 2. So that's a 5-digit number. And again, this is something that we do not share with others. Now, there you go. This is my health portal. So an entire list of appointments and referrals, of which I have none because I'm not going to the doctor at the moment. The entire health history is here, again, thanks to the X-Road. We've been digitizing health. So e-health, we've had that since 2008. So it's been quite some time. All of the times I've gone to a doctor, everything leaves. Every time a doctor opens my file to work on it, the file ends up in my health history. I can check any visit I had to the doctor when it comes to, for example, let me just show you this. This is kind of cool. Blood test. I hope there are no doctors among us who will see how badly I'm doing. Oh, it only shows my cholesterol, which is a little bit high. But I guess this is good enough. So when there's a blood test result, you know how usually they're displayed in completely unreadable abbreviations with some sort of units, and a non-medical professional, non-medical person cannot understand what this is. So we designed a way for a regular person without medical training to be able to understand whether the result that they have in a test, if it's good or bad, is within the norm or not. So this is sort of like a color system, right? I can see that the reference range is below 5 and my cholesterol is a little bit higher. So I can ask my family doctor to give me some recommendations about how to lower my cholesterol, which probably I should do, by the way. Now, a list of vaccinations, so all sorts of cool things. Let's have a look at the logs, because we saw a data tracker on the state portal, which is user unfriendly, to say the least, right? It's very difficult to understand it, to be honest. But when it comes to very sensitive data, which is my health data, right? Then I have a much better view and understanding of what has been happening to my data, who has been looking at my data. All right. What I'm trying to demonstrate is something like that. So in addition to the time and date and the sort of query that this doctor made, I can see the actual name of the doctor. Because it's sensitive data, medical data, right? I want to make sure that I have full control of who has access to my data. Now here we have actual names of people. It's no longer some sort of a company or a technical description. It is an actual name and a place where they're working. Much easier to understand if anything is out of the ordinary here. And I guess what's very important to understand is that Estonia takes data protection very seriously. It's actually quite rare for a person to be sent into jail in Estonia. We have, yes, low crime levels and a lenient attitude towards punishment, I guess. But now when it comes to data protection, now why I showed you these logs is, you see, if I find that my medical data, for example, was opened by someone who was not authorized to do that, they were not providing a service to me, I don't recognize that name. And they don't have a good explanation about why they were opening my medical files. As I said, again, everything leaves a trace because of the timestamping on the X-Road. You cannot access somebody's data without it leaving a trace. So that's how you combat corruption, basically. Now, if someone opens my file without my authorization, just to have a look at it out of curiosity, for whatever reason. You see, doctors have, by default, they have access to lots of medical data, but they're only allowed to open a person's file when they are actively providing a service to them. So if that's not the case, a person, a doctor, or a police officer, or a bank clerk who is curious about somebody's financial data or anything like that, they could be sent to jail for up to 1 year for simply looking at somebody's data. It is quite harsh in Estonia. Now, if you forward that data that you acquired illegally to someone, meaning you disclose somebody's medical data, for example, could be a famous politician who's hospitalized and you want to give information to the press because people are demanding the details, right? You will lose your license, pay a huge fine, and go to jail for up to 3 years, which is pretty much unheard of in Estonia. Like it's really, really very harsh considering to other sentences that we have. So it is a serious, serious crime to misuse somebody's data. And we've had several public hangings to make sure that everyone with access to private information knows that they cannot access it. Now, we have been talking for about an hour, and I think I will just jump to something that I think it's all right. I want to open the Q&A session, if possible. So if there are, I'm sorry for finishing this a little bit abruptly. I guess I got somewhat thrown off by the fact that I couldn't access the state portal, but I guess the main idea that I want to leave you with is that it's not enough in our understanding to build a secure infrastructure on which your entire digital society is built and providing citizen-centric services, right? You have to make sure that people know that their data is protected and that they have the tools to control that. We feel that this encourages people to express their opinion, to feel part of the democratic process, to feel empowered to express their opinion and trust the government more, because they know that their data is protected and that the government, even though they make mistakes, because they do. And in Estonia, every time a government makes a mistake, they come out and speak about it publicly. We do not hide these things. Doesn't make any sense to hide it. Everything is transparent. But the government talks to the people if there's a cyber attack with an impact, for example, and data has been leaked. We don't find out about it from the press. We find out about it from our state. With time, this builds trust, and it's a lot easier to navigate the governance, e-governance or otherwise, when your people trust you. So we feel that having built this digital state, we have much better control of our lives and of the direction in which our society is moving. That would be a wrap on my part. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to ask them or answer them, sorry.
Thank you, Petra. Thank you for such an insightful presentation and demonstration on the Estonians' journey into digitization. And I think we can learn a thing or two as South Africans on how to digitize our government. And I would like to get colleagues to engage with you, ask questions, and they can even put them on a chat.
I'm looking at the chat right now. There are some questions here. But that is an AI assistant. Can you help me navigate a little bit? It seems like it's an AI assistant.
With an AI assistant. So I think there's only one comment that came from Benjamin where he was explaining what is a distributed denial service attack is. And I think another comment that is there is just me actually sharing that should they want to hear more about the presentation that you presented, it is on our Knowledge Hub and YouTube channel for GTech.
Mm-hmm. All right, lovely. So is everything absolutely clear, or did I bore tire you to death with my presentation? Or maybe, okay, do you think it's possible to implement the Estonian digitalization with a larger population? That's a lovely question. Thank you. Yes, it is. It's on point. Now, the X road, which is the infrastructure, right? Because EID is highly scalable. That there's no question about that, right? The infrastructure, how the interoperability platform. The X road is highly scalable. It can cater to millions and millions of people. Estonia is not the only country that is using it, although it is true that there aren't very many use cases of much larger populations using the X road to exchange data. So no countries in the millions or hundreds of millions of people are using the X road currently. Now we know that technically it is absolutely possible to use the X road for that, for infrastructure for a much larger population. But it is possible to build on top of the X road or with the same structure or logic that the X road utilizes. It's also, to be honest, it's not the only interoperability platform that is in use currently. Local companies, Cybernetica, for example, have been developing custom interoperability platforms for several countries globally. So we have the expertise in Estonia, and we know that either the X road or something similar to the X road can definitely support millions and millions of population. How did the country? Sorry.
No, I just wanted to read the following question from Neo,
sure.
But you can go ahead. How did the country foster legal and ethical adoption of technology?
So meaning, if I understand correctly, how do we push for this change? How did we get the people on board? Legally, I mentioned that we started with the updating of our legal system of the legislation from the very beginning in the 1990s, because Estonia is a rule of law country. We cannot do things that are not substantiated in the law, or that not are supported by the law or not allowed in the law. So yes, we've had to change laws, and we had to invent a lot of these clauses ourselves along the way. We couldn't copy them from anyone because, again, no one had gone digital in the 1990s, and we had to think of how to accommodate the services that we wanted to provide, how we could accommodate them with the legal infrastructure. So I guess that's a question to the legal team that was in charge in the moment, but we're actually still working on it. For example, we in December, we finally launched a government app, which is a little bit embarrassing. Please forgive me, but yes, we've been a digital state for quite some time. Now we're fully digital, and we only came up with a mobile app like a month ago. There really was no need for it. Because all of the services that we have are mobile friendly, and we have EID. It was easy to use. We weren't really missing a mobile app, but it is necessary. It is, it's a thing of the times. You have to have an app. Now, in our app, we cannot display the ID card and the driver's card that is displayed in my mobile app currently, the state mobile app, cannot serve as an official proof of identity. I cannot show it to a policeman, police person, police officer, legally. It doesn't represent me. It's not my legal document, the one that I have in my state app. We're currently updating that law. So we have to change our law on whatever law that is, to allow the digital version of our ID card to actually serve as proof of identity. So it's an ongoing process. Again, technologies change. We will be able to do that very soon. We're promised it's going to be done like within several months, but still, it's taking a little bit longer than it should. Now, in terms of ethical adoption, that's a good question. You see, we started in the 1990s, when most of the people for whose benefits that was being done, right? The people in Estonia were not following very closely what the government was doing in terms of, digital society. None of us could really, most of us couldn't understand what was going on. So what we saw was basically the result of these efforts in the early 2000s, when we had to get a digital ID, when we had to when we started using the first digital services. We were lucky enough to see the benefits of digital services right away. So no one was really consulting with the Estonian population. There was no pushback. There was no issue with the society telling the government that we don't want digitalization. There was nothing like that. So, for example, if you look at the countries who are trying to digitize currently, for example, Germany is really struggling because there's massive pushback from the population who is closed to modernization. They don't want technology. They're wary of it. They're afraid of it. They have data privacy concerns. They should be concerned. But the thing is, a lot of this pushback is coming from misinformation, of lack of information. So we're trying to help Germany overcome that. But basically, this was not a thing in Estonia. When we regained independence, there was pretty much nothing that we could do to make things work. To make things worse in Estonia. Every step forward was a step in the right direction. We were very eager to modernize. We had no ethical concerns about digitalization. We just started benefiting from the results of digitalization pretty much right away. So I hope that very long answer somehow is good enough. I'm sorry if I talk too much. So as part of digital transformation journey, did you lean more towards open source platforms or proprietary, or a mix of both? Now, that's a good one. So we outsource the development of the digital society to the private sector. But a lot of the products that they have built, X-Road, for example, they're open source. Everyone is welcome to use them. So we have been pushing for digitalization globally and talking about it so vocally globally, because we can share these products with the world. So a lot of them are open source. And for example, I mentioned products that are built on top of the X-Road for higher scalability and more sort of client-centered features. Those kind of products that are built by the private sector, not for the Estonian government, but for example, other governments, they would be proprietary, for example. So I guess it's a mix. Adoption is seemingly dependent on civic confidence in government. That's a good comment. But it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg question too, isn't it? So do you digitize and then get the trust? Do you first have to get the trust and then digitize? Estonia was, again, in a pretty unique situation. The feeling was that we want to turn this country around. Digitalization is the way forward. It's going to benefit the entire society. And even though we come from a post-Soviet past where people do not naturally trust their government, and that's a very good idea not to, because the government will trick you, right? There's actually, there wasn't really, Estonians are not unique in the sense that we don't have this special gene that makes us trust our government more. Maybe it was the perfect timing. You know, we were able to see the benefits of digitalization soon enough. And our government was, you know, like they had a vision and the actual determination to provide a public good, to provide digital services or services overall that would benefit the society. So even though they made mistakes, at least the intention was good. So we had very little time being independent before we started benefiting from the initiatives that the digitalization initiatives, and our lives kept improving very quickly thanks to everything that digitalization brought. Plus, we joined the European Union in the early 2000s, NATO and everything. Life was only getting better. So even though there are some concerns and some critics of any product that you can think of in terms of digital society, most of the people are not concerned because the government has been treating us fairly, has been transparent about any mistakes that they have made, and there have been some, and some have been like quite bad. But I guess it is definitely very difficult to get out of this vicious cycle where a government cannot move with digitalization because the citizens do not trust, and the citizens do not trust because the government cannot provide better services. It's definitely very hard to get out of that. So in these situations, we feel that everything comes down, or everything begins, however you put it, everything begins from a decision that's made by the leadership to do the necessary things regardless of the mood in society, possibly. Please don't quote me on that. But someone needs to make the decision and start doing the right thing. Because if you're trying to do the right thing and not to screw people over, you're going to gain trust. People talk about good things that are happening to them. Yes, not as much as they talk about the bad things happening to them, but still the word is going to spread that digital services are good and they save time. All right.
Thank you, Petra. I'm going to take one last round of questions because we are actually over by 4 minutes for our allocated time. I don't know if there are any other questions that are coming through. If not, we will close the webinar now at 15:20, and we'll like to thank you, Petra, for your time and giving us an insightful presentation that actually shows that we are not just looking at technology here, we're actually looking at strategy of policy and change mindset shift in citizens into adopting digitization. Thank you very much.
They go hand in hand, yes. Thank you very much for your questions, and I'm sorry not everything worked perfectly well today, but it was a pleasure. Hopefully we'll see each other again soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, colleagues, for joining. Have a lovely weekend further.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, Petra. Thanks, Nobuntu.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks very much for an insightful presentation.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.